One of the questions I ask everybody, and I'll ask the listeners right now to think about for themselves, is what % happy are you in your role right now?
That's
Right?
always a good one.
It's a good one because it kind of gives you, of course we can all go out with our friends and have drinks and or whatever, complain about our work. What % happy are you? And so most people find me when they're 20 to 40% happy at work. I actually had somebody yesterday who said they're 3% happy at work.
Okay, be honest. If someone asked you right now, what % happy are you at work? What would you say? Would it even be something that you feel safe answering with that real number? So many of us are sitting in our jobs that look really great on paper with a good salary, good title, good benefits. A lot of people have unlimited PTO now, but quietly inside they are miserable. And then we feel guilty for saying that out loud because somebody else would kill for our jobs, right? I am Rosie Zilinskas, the creator of The Articulation Gap. And my guest today is Rachel Spekman. She is a therapist and a career coach. She has this exercise that she does with her clients called a job audit. And this is where you actually measure the gap between what you are doing and what lights you up. We are talking about the hidden cost of staying stuck and exactly what you can do about it today. Let's get started. Rachel, I'm so excited to have you on today's podcast. This is the No Woman Left Behind podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have a great conversation. As you will know, this podcast caters to women in the corporate space. And a lot of times I talk to women and they feel stuck. So can you tell me a little bit of a difference between being stuck and then getting unstuck? Because those are two completely different things. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you mean by when I'm stuck and then getting unstuck?
Right. So I'm going to apply some of the therapy principles that I use here that I think will just naturally lend themselves to some of the work that we're talking about. So a therapy principle that I use often is called acceptance and commitment therapy. And the reason I'm mentioning that at the outset is acceptance is realizing, oh my gosh, this is happening. I'm stuck. It kind of might sneak up on you, or it might be a looming little idea for some time. The commitment piece is, wait, I want to do something about this. I don't need to live this way, or I don't need to be in resistance to what's going on. And so you can call it awareness to action. You can call it a variety of terms. That another way of thinking about it is pre-contemplation, which is, I'm not sure. I'm feeling a little kind of like I don't know where to go. I've plateaued. I don't have the network that I want. To wait a second, I have a lot of agency here. And I think that's really the key word from stuck to unstuck, which is what kind of agency do you have, whether it's at your current setting, in your community, with the network outside of work, so that you can tap into what is the next level for me. The level doesn't have to necessarily be up. It could be across. It could be moving in a different diagonal direction. But what does that mean for you and what you want next?
Right. So let's level set this a little bit more. So a lot of times there's women that just stay in their jobs way longer than they need to. And you just talked about agency. Can you just, for our listeners, can you just explain what you mean by agency? Because I know what you mean, but maybe not everybody knows what you mean when you say the word agency.
Okay. So for everyone who's listening, I recommend whether let's say you're so happy. That's fantastic. I love that you're happy. But if you're a little bit stuck or you're kind of trying to think about what's around the corner, I encourage you to come up with or identify what I call a corporate crush. Okay. A corporate professional crush. So somebody at the workplace, you're like, I like how they lead that meeting. Ooh, I like what they're wearing to work. I like how they're mentoring our team. And so when I say agency, I mean, who and how are you becoming the next version of yourself professionally? and who's lighting you up and guiding the way to do just that. And so agency is by definition, don't quote me Merriam-Webster, but how I define it with clients and for myself is what is within my wheelhouse to make a move in the direction that I want to.
So it's kind of like, what can I do? What can I control? What is within my tasks, routines that I can do every day, correct?
Exactly. And I would think about it as like community, relationships, um, education that you have. So agency can be far and wide, it can be deep, and it can also be, there can be some breadth to it as well. And I think very often we get stuck because we either don't think we have agency, we don't know what kind of agency we have, but that's really where some of that stuckness happens. It happens in personal relationships, but I think definitely in the corporate world, it can happen in a very specific way where it's kind of, the classic. When I did my MBA, it was like the woman, somebody, you're in a corporate setting or any work setting, and it's like, who wants to take notes? And, somebody raises their hand, and then 20 years later, they're still taking notes for the meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And you think, wow, wait a second, I had some agency. I could have said, let's rotate who the note taker is every quarter.
Right, right. So can you, obviously you're a therapist and you're a career coach. So can you give an example of maybe one of your clients that you have helped, go from that being stuck and then getting unstuck and how you help them?
Yes. So I am thinking about somebody who's actively becoming unstuck right now. And I like to kind of say, like it's not a one and done, right? And however long we've been stuck, it's going to take that much time and effort and energy to get unstuck. But I'm working with somebody who left the corporate setting and is now with a small kind of boutique consulting firm. And so she is feeling stuck because she was kind of sold a bag of goods, as it happens sometimes. And I talk about that often, like what looks good on paper doesn't always feel good, or the opposite, right? What is like, I don't think I'd like that job. And all of a sudden you're like, I love this job.
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of investigation. But what's happening with this client is she was sold this opportunity and there's a succession plan going on. And she thought she would be a key part of this succession plan. And what's actually happening is she's realizing, wait a second, my competitors are actually the people I want to be connecting with more. I don't want to leave this company that I think is kind of heading in not a great direction. So talk about agency. Right?
Yeah.
So she's realizing what she enjoys, what her strengths are, and she's actually kind of re-exploring the corporate world that she left. This is what I call no U-turns, right? There are no U-turns. We're all making moves. It's a chessboard. We're trying to figure out what are the most advantageous moves. And so this client is realizing, wait a second, the skills that I had in the corporate setting of running teams, running meetings, running budgets, all of these skills are things that I thought I was going to bring to a boutique place. And in fact, I was able to really enjoy using them and I want to pivot them. And that's what I help people figure out. If you're stuck, do you need to make a small, medium, or large pivot to get more aligned with your own, I call it your skills, values, and interests?
Okay. All right. So can you give me an example of a small, medium, and large? Because that's really intriguing. I love that.
Right. Okay. So a small is, okay, so one of the questions I ask everybody, and I'll ask the listeners right now to think about for themselves, is what % happy are you in your role right now?
That's
Right?
always a good one.
It's a good one because it kind of gives you, of course we can all go out with our friends and have drinks and or whatever, complain about our work. What % happy are you? And so most people find me when they're 20 to 40% happy at work. I actually had somebody yesterday who said they're 3% happy at work.
That just hurts my heart.
And then I'll say to them, would you live in a house that's 97% falling apart or 80%? Would you stay in a relationship that's 80% falling apart? You wouldn't, right? And that for work, we have the golden handcuffs and we have the salary and we have how we appear professionally to the world, of course. So it's more complicated. It can be more complicated than that. And so I asked the what % happy are you? Because that's going to indicate what kind of change do you want to make.
Okay.
And so a small change is somebody who is, maybe bored, maybe feels like they've plateaued, or actually sometimes we talk about their skills have atrophied,
Yes.
right? And so, I want to just be more engaged in what I'm doing. All right, well, let's figure out what kind of is it where you are right now? I don't help anybody quit their job. People say, "Oh, you're going to help me quit my job." I might, but we're going to figure that out together. And so that's a small change, is maybe an internal pivot within, or realignment, or I'm going to bring in somebody more junior to kind of, delegate myself to a higher position, if you will, or a different position. A medium is, I think I've done all the growing I can do where I am. I want to try a new company, a new firm, kind of industry, maybe similar industry, but it could be industry adjacent as well. A pivot, a large pivot, and that's what I did, was a large pivot, is I am totally misaligned from what I'm doing. And so I was in the corporate setting. I was working with startups. I was doing operations, marketing, all kinds of mentorship opportunities with venture capitals, angels, et cetera. And for me, I went on an unexpected family planning journey to have my children. And when I got back to work, I realized, not just for my children, but for myself, I realized my values had really changed. I wanted to be doing much deeper work with individuals rather than this broad work that I was doing. And so I had some what I call dark nights of the soul, which a lot of people find me when they're having some
very familiar, yeah.
Having some dark nights of the soul, which my company's called Made for More Coaching, right? And you're like, I am made for more than this. What does that mean? Okay, now I have a mortgage, now I have a child, now what am I going to do about this? And so, and after about a year of exploration, truly a year of exploration, and the pandemic, I decided to leave my senior director role and become an intern through social work school. And so that's something else I'll say, which is the ego goes on a journey as we get more and more aligned.
Right. Okay, so that's a small, medium, and large. And I think we also talked a little bit on our pre-call. We also talked a little bit about, sometimes you said there is that misalignment, where everything is really going well on paper, but you're miserable. And that, I think, to me, that's a little bit different than you're in the wrong job or you want to pivot. Like, you're still successful, you're doing all the things, you're meeting all the metrics, but something does not feel like it's right inside. So what are some of the factors or the beliefs that are going on in that situation?
So that is part of my story as well. I was actually giving a keynote at an international conference, truly. And I said, I'm misaligned. Something is not right. And I actually kind of equated to a seesaw, that the seesaw's off. Something is happening. And we actually do an exercise really about the seesaw. What's actually happening is your values are misaligned, or your skills, people think, oh, she's great at budgeting, she's great at public speaking, but you actually internally hate doing that. But you've gotten so good at it, and the company's gotten so reliant on it, that you're just doing it. And all of a sudden you look up and it's been 5 years of doing it. Right? So we talk about not the skills that you are using, but what are the skills you enjoy using that get you in the flow state, right? That make you feel at the end of the day, like, maybe nobody saw I did that, but I did that with that, that skill. But, I really think the misalignment comes from, we're human beings, we're changing, we're growing, our lives are changing, and work has to change with that.
That makes sense. And so I have a lot of friends in the corporate space, and a lot of them have been at an organization or at their organization for a very long time. And one of the things that they struggle with is, and you kind of referred to the golden handcuffs of, like, oh my gosh, I've been there for too long. I have, umpteen days of vacation. I don't want to start over. But there is a hidden cost when they decide to stay because of all the, perks and whatever, even though they're not happy at that job. What do you think, what lens, like, what kind of limiting beliefs or thought process are they going through at that point, from a therapist, coach, career coach perspective, that it's just like, you know what? I'm going to be here for 17 more years until I retire, even though I hate the job, the company, whatever.
Yes, I totally. When I started business school, one of my closest friends was a VP at a very large bank. And I said, "Oh my gosh, you're a VP?" She said, "Everybody's a VP. They're going to be a VP forever." I mean, I just still remember that. And she was so angry. So, it was, I actually just had a funny metaphor for this, which is, we get our cars, at least where I live, you have to get your car inspected once a year. You have to get your tires aligned. You have to make sure the windshield wipers work, right? We have to do that for ourselves continually.
Right.
If we're lucky, we have a supervisor, a manager, a coach, somebody we really respect that's helping us do that. But if not, we have to be really intentional about doing it ourselves. And so, what I tell people who are, I had a boss who used to turn to me and say, 3 more hours till 5 o'clock, or 10 more years until I can retire, right? Just that kind of talk about draining energy. I mean, he really would say that to me. He was my boss. I said, wow. First of all, we have to figure out what I call kind of the moat around ourselves. Like, who are we going to spend time with? You can call it the 3 C's as well, which is the community that you're around, the contributions that you're making, and the ways that you're feeling challenged. If you can continue realign yourself with that to the best of your ability, that's going to create hopefully some kind of buffer from that. Is it 5 o'clock yet, or 10 years until retirement, in the best of circumstances? I think some people are very happy to go to work and say, this is what I'm doing. And I'm married to somebody like that. It doesn't need to mean a lot to me. It's a great place, great team. And then come home and there's the rest of your life. So I think a big part of it is assessing how much of work is going to be part of your identity, part of meaning making to you. A big part of what I do with people is, okay, well, if you're not going to change your job, well, what are the things that make you happy, and how are you going to add that more into your workday, into your life overall? I'm working with a client at a corporate setting who's very into meditation. And, to leave kind of a golden handcuff job in the corporate world to become a meditation teacher is quite a difference. So we're talking about how can they do more meditation within their workplace. And they actually started a meditation minute at lunch for their team.
That's
And
cool.
It's actually going quite well. So these are small, kind of ways to realign within ourselves. Because, if it can be a long day, a long 10 years if you're just counting down the clock. We all know that, right? And so, what are the things human beings need things to look forward to in our personal lives? We need things on the calendar. Oh, we're going to that weekend. Oh, we have that thing. Oh, I'm excited about that concert. We need to create the same things in our professional lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to the hidden costs, like what are some actual costs that it's costing us to stay at that company for however long, even if it's our decision
Yeah.
and we're not 100% aligned, where is that cost?
I mean, very often it's in your health, your physical health, or your mental health. As a therapist, I did my first year training in a very busy community health center, and very often people were referred from PCPs with racing heart, skin rashes. I mean, truly, your body does keep the score. That's a very well-known therapy book. And so your body's telling you something's wrong, something's not right, something's a little misaligned. It doesn't mean we have to react to every single one, but when we start to ignore it, that's when we see a cost with our body, our posture, all kinds of things. So that's the physical piece. I think the mental health piece is, I mean, if you walk into work every single day and it's 9 o'clock and you say it's 7 hours until I leave, 8 hours until I leave, it's going to erode just your self-confidence, your enjoyment. Work does take up a large part of our lives, as we know. And so really that depression, anxiety piece, sometimes it's disassociating, which is basically pretending you're somewhere else all day long. I mean, these are some of the costs that I don't want to be doomsday about it, but if we don't start to catch those, I mean, that person who's at 3% happiness, well, at one point she was 50% happy, and then 40% happy, and then 30%. And It's kind of a joke among marriage counselors, which is they'd like to see the couple when they're not in crisis, right? Like you'd like to see them like come in on your best day.
Yeah, yeah, that's so funny. So we've identified some pretty big things, like not being in symmetry with the type of work that you want to do and the type of work that you're doing, having that hidden cost of, just deciding to stay at a job that you're not thinking that you would want to retire from. And so, what are some actionable things then that women can do to start getting back into alignment? Because as you mentioned, when you're not in alignment, the mental health, the physical health, it can show up in many different ways. So, what are some things that women can start doing so that we can get back into alignment? And whether you decide to stay at the job
Mhm.
or leave or transition or not, what are the things that they need to start doing to be happy and in alignment?
Okay. So I'm gonna provide some of the exercises I give clients in the early days. The first is do what I call a job audit right now. What are you doing with your time, whether it's in the job description or what you ultimately actually are doing? And let's say it's grant writing. I have to do that for 50% of the time. Well, in the column right next to it, do it in an Excel. Talk about practical. I enjoy that 10%. Start to calculate. Let's use some of these corporate finance principles for ourselves. What is the difference? What is asymmetrical in terms of our day, our tasks, our responsibility, and our enjoyment? Now, I tell everybody, I'll get back to that in 1 second. Just to be realistic, I say our goal is to be 80% happy. Now, you tell somebody who's like 3% happy, 80%, it's like we're going to the moon. I mean,
Yeah,
but we're not going to go there. We're going to get a 4% and 5% or 20 to 21. This is the first step in doing that to see, well, what is out of alignment? Okay, well, once you see that, and I mean, you can color code it green, red, yellow.
I like that.
Because it's very tangible. And then, well, what do you do with it? So some people have that, no, I'm in like totally the red zone, or oh, I'm in the yellow zone, or right. And then it's okay, well, then we can get like much more strategic about just having that data. Is there a boss that you can talk to about it? A mentor, a sponsor? How do you start to delegate things that you really don't enjoy? Um, there's a very famous study that a long time ago that was basically like if you tell a student they're good at English and not great at math, or the opposite, where should they spend their extra time? Should they spend it on the thing they're not good at or the thing that they're good at? And the research showed that actually, when you double down on the things that you're good at, you get all of that endorphin kind of thing back.
That's kind of cool. I thought you were going to say the math.
No, I mean, you would think so, right? Because it's kind of gets into that classic, like, we could talk about performance reviews forever, but like, here are the things that you're a 5 on, here are the things that you're a 2 on, and everybody's like, I'm a 2 at this. It's like, how do you get your 4s to 5s? How do you get
Right.
your 3s to 4s, right? So that's the first exercise I would give you is the internal audit. Then I would do what I call the internal resume. I'm sorry, that was the job audit. Then I call it the internal resume. So go back to every job you've had, start with the current one, and write down, pretend you're making a resume, but it's for yourself. And it's your favorite parts, it's your favorite days, the favorite things that maybe nobody else sees, but you did it. So, oh my gosh, I went ahead and led a 2,000 person event. Can you believe I did that? I did the organization, X, Y, and Z. I moved to a new city to do this. I did a remote job when I didn't think I could. All kinds of things that really light you up. It might not be on the resume, but when you can start to catalog those, you can even use ChatGPT after that. What are the themes here? What are the skills I've been using that have most lit me up and my values? So that's kind of the second one. So these are kind of the ways we can start to say, where am I out of alignment? And then how do I start to create a plan? We need that light at the end of the tunnel, but we need to know we're in the tunnel. Back to your original question. And then I would say really the third thing is we can't do this work alone, whether you're doing it with a coach, with a team, with a boss, if you're lucky enough to have somebody who's on your team. And I don't mean your team at work, I mean your individual team. I like to say we collect people as we journey, right? As we move through life. And so when I was on my kind of dark night of the soul, I grabbed a few people that I really trusted. That's a big thing here, the vulnerability, the trust. I have a lot of people who work through feelings of guilt and loyalty to a company. Well, this company helped me get my master's. This company, gave me a long maternity leave or whatever. Okay, we can work with that. And you're also allowed to want something different as well.
I love that you are familiar enough from the therapist perspective with the corporate world when you said, man, I got a 2 on that one thing, but I really want to be a 5, because obviously performance reviews in the corporate world are, huge, and you don't always have that boss. And even if they wanted to, Rachel, because they are so busy, bosses don't always have the bandwidth to help you elevate and advance to the next level. So first of all, doing that job audit for yourself is tremendous. I really like that, because if you're able to identify which skills or which parts of the job you really like and kind of color code it, I think that's brilliant. That internal resume will help you with that second phase of, these are the tasks that I love to do. And like you said, 80% of happiness at work is like winning the lottery, because we all have to do things that we don't like to do no matter what. And then getting a coach or getting maybe a mentor or an advocate or buddies, like accountability partners. You don't always have to pay somebody to actually get that accountability. Pair up with somebody at work that wants to do the same thing so that you guys can talk through that information. But those are really practical things that people can do. So I really appreciate how you brought it all together. Now, you also talked about the dark night of the soul, and I want to explain that a little bit more, and you can explain your situation too. But the dark night of the soul is just a situation. It could be months, years, weeks, where you have had some kind of, it's usually generally some kind of trauma, disaster situation in your life where everything falls apart for you and you kind of hit rock bottom, and then you start rebuilding yourself. And it's mostly on an emotional basis. And so you can look it up on YouTube, Dark Night of the Soul. There's tons of information on it. But a lot of times, not everybody always has a Dark Night of the Soul. I know I have had one. Rachel has had one. But it's a really good way for you to do a literal introspection of your life from A to Z and all of your emotions and stuff like that. So from your perspective, Rachel, when somebody is in a situation like this and they're doing the job audit and the internal resume, that's almost like a corporate dark night of the soul, because you're like really trying to figure out, okay, what am I supposed to do here? Does that make sense to you, Rachel?
Yeah, very much. I mean, I think I didn't really touch on this earlier, but I think this kind of loops back to one of your questions and this question, which is one of the key pieces we can do is give ourselves permission. Because very often it's, I shouldn't feel this way, or I'm lucky to have this job, or everybody's laying people off. And some of these are realities for sure, but we're dismissing our own actual feelings for a variety of reasons. And so the permission, what's funny about a dark night of the soul, it doesn't ask for permission. It's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. I mean, I talk about this on my website too, which is I was literally watching Moana on an airplane after that keynote, and I was crying hysteric. Like I was crying watching Moana. And I say this because people would have been like, did someone just die? No, but something in me is happening and I couldn't control it. And so, I think whether we have that kind of dark night of the soul, when we get uncomfortable, that's when things happen. And when things are comfortable, fantastic, like wonderful, keep it up. And I'll say that with coaching and therapy, which is what we're doing here is figuring out what's going well and how do we dial that up, and what's not going well and how do we dial that down. Yeah. That's really what it is. I mean, we have strategies, we have tools, we have timelines, we have deliverables for that, but that's what it is.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of times, we women, we're kind of like the anchor of the family always. And we're so busy taking care of everybody else, and our careers, sometimes we just kind of leave it on autopilot. And when I talk to my clients, I always say, take 2 hours a month and do something relevant to your career. So this is a good, like the job audit, the internal resume, and then getting some kind of buddy coach. Those are things that you can start working on right away. 2 hours a month is going to be nothing, but it'll start giving you that motivation to inspect what you're doing, kind of like that job audit. So those are all great recommendations. So Rachel, I'm curious if you can just tell us in the next, few minutes, how did you go from corporate to therapy to career coach?
Yes, and I do want to tell you that I actually do audits with people. I do a one-time audit with folks, and then we create a roadmap, whether you want to work together or not. I just want to say that is something I offer, which is a one-time audit. Okay, so I started my career as a teacher, kids, and I thought I wanted to be a teacher. And I became a teacher, and I realized very quickly that I do not like classroom discipline. I like children in theory, but not when there are 30 of them needing things from me. And I pivoted and ended up actually working in sort of nonprofits that were working with kids. And then from there, I ended up actually running the operations and the project management. And that's how I got involved in the startup world and in the corporate world. So it was this kind of natural pivot actually at that time. And I would say they might feel like large changes, but they were kind of like, hey, you'd be good at this, you'd be good at this. When I was doing that keynote internationally, something internally, like I said, had been happening to me. And on my family planning journey, I had been working with a therapist and a coach, and I had been in a group setting trying to get support. And I realized, oh my gosh, like when I actually had my child, I said, I have two children. When I had my first child, I said, wait, now I'm just going to go back to what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, this part of my identity that I had kind of quieted, like I wanted to actually be a therapist when I was a child, but I had been discouraged from that. It had been seen as listening to other people's problems and a whole bunch of other things. That's another thing we do is unpack what we've been told about what work
Yes.
isn't. And, so at that time, I realized I would sit down with a client in the startup space and I'd say, so how are you doing? And they're like, we're going to cover their budget and their marketing and their operations. And they say, I'm so stressed. This is what's happening. And I'd say, tell me about that. And I started to realize, whoa, I actually enjoy talking about what's going on in their lives more than their business. I mean, I enjoy the business piece for sure. But then that kind of, that was like snowballing a bit. And I pitched myself internally. I said, could I be the coach for the teams, the people I was working with? And they said, no, that's what therapists do. I'm like, duh, And so I started working with this coach and I was really deciding to make a major pivot at that time. And then I started social work school and I got there and I swear the first day I was like, I've arrived. I was a kid in a candy shop. Every class I was taking, I was like, this is amazing. Human development. Oh my gosh, family system. I was just alive. And the coaching actually was born out of some of the startups I had worked with said, you seem so excited. I see what you're posting. I can just get this energy from you. I'm not as happy as I'd like to be. Can you coach me? And I was like, coach you? I mean, I was doing it for free, honestly. And then I thought, well, we're kind of committing to this, so maybe I should charge. And I started, and I've always sort of been like a resume writer, and I've always done writing for people, or I've always helped people with writing. I am a writer as well, and so that kind of came naturally to me. And then it was sort of taking off. And now I'm both a therapist and a career coach. I call it a career strategist because it's really strategy work.
Right. Yeah. But it's amazing how one thing leads to another, and then you're like, all of a sudden, I mean, I never thought I would become an entrepreneur. When I was working in the corporate world, I'm like, oh no, I need my check in the bank every 2 weeks, but then things happen. And then kind of like you said, once you had your child, you couldn't just go back to do what you were doing before because you're like, I'm different. Like it's no longer enough to do just that. So when I got laid off from the corporate world and then I was looking for another job. And then when I went to apply for a C-suite position and I was already one of the two candidates and they said, we want you to do this project. And I was like, all right, cool. And then I sat down to work on the project and I got nauseous. I literally felt like I was going to throw up. And then my husband was coming home from work that night. And like, as soon as he walked in the door, I was like, we need to talk. Because I cannot see myself going back to the corporate world. And like you said, there's plenty of people that are just happy doing their job, punch in, punch out. They do their work, they do good work, and they leave and they don't think about it. But, not everybody is like that. So we need to make people aware of what their options and their choices are. And like these actionable takeaways that we've already talked about, there are things that you can do. Rachel, any final words that you want to leave our listeners with?
I wanna just say that for a while I was like, well, what's the name of my coaching company? What is this? Am I a coach? Am I a strategist? Because I think there's this rigidity that we have. That's kind of what I want to close out with. We have this rigidity. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it for 4 years, and then I'm going to switch after 2 years, and for a while, and I had to register my company, and I thought, what's the name of my company? And then I was telling a client, you're made for more than this job. And she turned to me and said, that's the name of your company. And I said, oh my gosh, you're right. I mean, I'm getting the chills telling you this right now. And I said, you're right. And that was a year and a half after my company started. Sometimes we feel like we need to know every single thing. And I sat with that. I said, oh my gosh, you're right. That is. And that's what I've changed the name of my company to, Made for More Coaching. So I want to kind of end with that aha that we can let ourselves have and give ourselves permission to have.
I think that is the perfect ending to this conversation, because you're absolutely right. And the way you described it, yes, I'm going to do 4 years of college and 2 years of, master's and then my PhD or whatever. And you have a plan. And, like, what is that saying that if you want God to laugh, tell them your plans, tell him your plans, so it's something like to that effect. But it's just like, you never know what life is going to throw at you. So for us to not be as rigid is such a huge takeaway.
Can I say one more thing that I just realized? I want to say this. Because you just said something about I'm going to have this. And my tagline is I work with high achieving professionals. Okay. High performing professionals. I cannot tell you the number of women and men who come to me and say, well, do you think I qualify as high performing?
That's interesting.
And so take yourself seriously. Take what you're doing seriously. If you're listening, you are a high performing. I mean, you're going to work, you're doing the things, you're getting the projects done. Whether you like it or not, it's happening.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much.
That's a great segue there to end. So, all right. Well, thank you very much, Rachel. I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel said something I keep coming back to: giving ourselves permission. That just lands, right? Permission to admit that we are not 100% happy. We don't take the time to do that assessment. Permission to know that we can do something different, even when the job that we're doing looks good on paper. So here is your homework for this week. Do Rachel's job audit. This is your homework, your assignment. Write down what you are actually doing with your time and be honest with yourself more than anything about what lights you up and what drains you. That's it. Just get the data. That is a great starting point. Rachel's insights were amazing on how to actually identify what makes you happy. And if you are ready to go a step further and put your impact into words that actually get you seen and rewarded at work, I want you to check out the free Impact Clarity Coach. This is a tool that I built for you so that you can start measuring your work. Rachel's information and the link to the free Impact Clarity Coach are going to be in the show notes. And thank you, Rachel, so much for the honesty and the tools that you are sharing with us today. So with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.